Everything was stripped away from me in life. Yeah, I'm mad at God. I'm mad at everybody.
Greg Kelley is now waiting to be released.
In a highly publicized trial, 18-year-old Greg Kelley, the Cedar Park, Texas football star on his way to a full scholarship, was found guilty of sexually assaulting two 4-year-old boys, a crime he didn't commit.
I remember screaming, how can this be happening? It was a nightmare. It was a start of just a nightmare.
Because his parents had medical issues and couldn't drive, Greg was staying at the home of his best friend and teammate, Jonathan McCarty, who lived across the street from Leander High School. The two 18-year-olds had an uncanny resemblance. However, Greg was the only one questioned and suspected of the abuse that took place in the daycare run in the McCarty home by Jonathan's mother. Greg's sentence, 25 years with no parole.
I'm asking God, man, if you're real, step in right now. I need a savior. I can't do this by myself. I'm crying out.
Those who knew Greg couldn't fathom he was guilty. Other concerned citizens like Jay Bryden were convinced he got what he deserved, until he became aware of a different point of view.
Then I started seeing people on Facebook just comment about how wrong it was, and I had a guy call me and said, hey man, have you heard about this Greg Kelley thing? And I said, man, I saw it last night. He goes, dude, my daughter went to that trial every single day, and he didn't do this.
Jake spoke to many others who knew Greg. Soon, he too was convinced a good man had been wrongly convicted and decided something had to be done. 2 days after Greg's verdict, he brought hundreds to the county jail where Greg was being held.
Complete strangers, as well as people of the community, were coming and rallying and just chanting free GK, free GK. It made me feel really good to know that we're getting somewhere. Like, people are fighting for me. You know, there's a reason to have hope now.
Eventually taken to the state penitentiary in Huntsville, Texas, Greg would find even more reason to have hope.
The Lord had my undivided attention now. That I was sitting there getting to know Him, getting to know Jesus, who He was, and preparing me for the journey I'm about to face. And ultimately let me know that I'm gonna be with you through it all.
By now, Jake had hired a defense attorney, Keith Hampton, to look deeper into Greg's case. It didn't take long to see things weren't adding up. Meanwhile, thousands were praying for Greg.
There was prayers of me being free and my name being cleared. There was prayers of me being able to get football back and play football. There was prayers of me getting my girlfriend back and marrying her. Not at the age of 45 when I would get out, but as a young man.
Greg would spend the next 3 years in prison waiting for a retrial, relying on God to get him through each day. In that time, his attorney, Mr. Hampton, made some disturbing findings. A detective and prosecutor eager for a conviction, a mishandled police investigation, and no due process. He took his findings and new evidence to the new district attorney, who agreed to reopen the case. On August 22nd, Mr. Hampton handed Greg a piece of paper saying Judge Donna King had ruled that his case would go to the Texas Appeals Court. And there was one other thing.
Puts it against the glass, and I read it, and I just start breaking down, and it says immediate release. And man, it was, oh wow, it was such a surreal moment. It was like, I asked Keith, I was like, man, are you for real?
Greg's fight for redemption wasn't over yet. Out on bond, he went home to his family, where he had to wait for a decision from the appeals court.
I just knew that tomorrow I could get stripped away from everybody again and get thrown back into prison.
In November 2019, 6 years after being found guilty, a now 24-year-old Greg Kelley appeared before Judge King. His conviction had been overturned, and he was declared innocent of all charges.
It was one of the most wonderful moments I've ever had in my life. I'm young, and I got a lot of life left to live.
As of today, no one has been charged for sexually abusing the two boys, including Greg's former friend and lookalike Jonathan McCarty, who was later convicted of other sexual crimes. As far as Greg, he went on to play one season of college football at Eastern Michigan University. He married his high school sweetheart, Gabri, opened an axe-throwing business, and is currently finishing up his business degree at the University of Texas in Austin. As tempting as it might be to hold bitterness against those who wronged him, Greg says he can only point to Jesus Christ.
It's so crazy to say that prison is a place full of hate, but it's where I learned how to love. And the more that I got to understand Jesus and what he did for me, right? Bearing that cross, shedding his blood for me, for my sins, and to choose to live the very best life in his reflection that I can. And that means forgiveness.